Hello and welcome to that time of the week where I talk about all what Tinto Talks has been talking about, and this time we're going to be talking about the Maghreb region and maps. Basically, I've decided to start splitting them in two because the comments that have been responded to have just been so... There's been a lot of them, and it's either having like an hour and a half video or splitting it in two, and it makes sense for me to split in two because it's summer, and the longer I spend on a video, the hotter my room gets, and it's kind of agony. So I'm going to split it in half so I can get rest. But anyway, if you would like to support what I do in bringing all of the information and exclusives, not really that exclusive, from the Tinto Talks forums to you in an easily digestible format, then how about you hit the subscribe button? Leave your comments in the comment section below, like the video, all of that standard YouTube gubbins. Now, let us get into it. First of all, with this post right here. Stein here is saying, to be honest, I think the map of EU5, or Tinto Talks, Project Caesar, is the most accurate world map you'll find for the year 1337, even if you search through every scientific reference book in the world. What do you think? So, initially when I saw this, I was like, no. Surely no. I mean, at the end of the day, it is still a game. But now I was thinking, what maps would be around? What maps there would be of this time period? And to that end, I don't think there is a massive amount. I don't think there is such an overwhelming wealth of geographical, political map data that there would be something that would be obviously far more accurate. I think there will be maps of 1337 that are slightly more accurate in like the border of some random location being just slightly more accurate. Potentially there are maps that have borders in gradients, right? The border between two countries many times, especially in places that are not so lived in, maybe like deserts and such, those borders were more gradients, right? There wasn't a definitive line in the sand. And what we have with Project Caesar, with EU5, is definitive lines in the sand. So maybe in that case there are some maps that might be slightly more accurate, but those maps don't have any population data. Whereas EU5 will have population data. Those maps are not going to cover the entire world. And honestly, the more I thought about it, I felt like, yeah, honestly, it's kind of probably up there. It's probably right there as one of the most accurate world maps for 1337. I think they're probably right. But there was a response from Johan that I would like to share with you. Firstly, Phoenicia here saying, because at the end of the day, the only sources that can be used are ones that can be read. There might be the most accurate historical records out there, but if they're not in a language that can be understood, usually English, then the devs can't use them. So, Johan responding here, talking about his team. If I'm looking at the people who have worked on designing and researching the maps, their native languages have been Spanish, Basque, Catalan, Swedish, German, Greek, and English, with some having fluency in Japanese, French, and Turkish, and know enough Latin, Chinese, and Russian to decipher maps and historical records. We also have native speakers of Polish and Portuguese at Tinto, so just going into basically who's on the team, there are some gaps in that, of course. I mean, there's 1,000 or more, I have actually no idea how many languages there are in the world, but there's quite a lot, more than there are countries for sure. So there are some gaps. So they don't have anyone that speaks or reads Arabic, Farsi, or Hindu, or Urdu. So that is a lot of people instantly that, or a lot of maps, let's say, that are, they need to be translated before being read, and translation errors are a thing that can and do happen. I'd say as well, I mean, they know enough Chinese, I guess, that's there, so there's going to be quite a lot of maps in Chinese, but yeah, nothing from the Arabian world, I guess, is being read for no Arabic, and Farsi, Hindu, or Urdu are, I believe they're all languages for India, which is, probably got a wealth of map resources as well that are untapped. So yeah, I just thought this comment was interesting, and I thought it fit with the whole theme of the video being talking about maps. So yeah, just thought I'd share that with you. But we move on to the Maghrebi maps, and of course, Pavia forgot to add in the topography, the climate, the vegetation maps to the main post, so they're sharing them here. The terrain maps. I'm not sure this surprises really much of anybody. Maybe the fact that there's some continental down here, but lots of Mediterranean in the north, then cold arid, and then just straight arid desert horribleness. Surprising that the oases maybe could have had something else, but I guess they're still arid. It's just the vegetation is different. But yeah, moving on there to the topography. Flatlands, hills, mountains, plateaus make sense. And then finally to the vegetation, just a whole bunch of desert, and then grasslands and woods in the north, lots of sparse as well. But yeah, just thought that should be added, and thank you to Pavia for updating the map. What's the reason for the huge Sevi over the Fez market? So this was when actually I can just show it. When we looked at the markets there. Sevilla went over Fez, and in my opinion, these really should be changed color, or at least one of them should be changed color, of course, because they're a little bit too close. But the reason for Sevilla owning all of the coastline and Fez not really being able to access it is said here. As the market center is coastal for Sevilla, it's easier to get market access spread through maritime presence than Fez. Take it as work in progress, as the market spread calculation is something of a constant rebalance. It's something we've heard before, something we'll probably keep hearing. How will the uncolonized passages and terrain work in the Sahara? Do countries exert control over them, or just onto the locations on either side of them, similar to strait crossing? It would be interesting to know how they impact trade and troop movement. So countries can't control corridors, but they can control locations at each end of the corridors, thus making Saharan oases quite strategic as they were historically. I think, and I know Johan disagrees with this because he's mentioned it in a previous comment way back when, I think corridors aren't necessary. I think straight crossings and troops essentially teleporting to the other side after a certain amount of time might work better, but I am not making the game, so it's not up to me. I think that system worked really well in Mayo and Taxes. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it here. Corridors, they're fine though. But yeah, not being able to control them directly, but control on each side, so makes me think that colonization, especially of these oases, well, I mean, this system couldn't work with EU4's colonization system. So learning what the replacement for that is going to be a pretty big deal, because obviously it can't be the same because you can only colonize adjacent tiles in EU4. So what replaces that, who knows. Troops can move them through them though, if in any other location. Makes sense. They're used for trading calculations, that's good. And they found while preparing the dev diary that there are some old remnants of when they were locations instead of corridors, unless they have culture and religion but zero pops. They'll be addressed, and they already created a ticket for it. Fair enough. Work in progress. What about the Canary Islands? Guessing they haven't been conquered or colonized by Spain yet. They've got a native population called the Guanches. I've not heard of them before. And it'll be shown along with the other Micronesian islands later on, which may also include Iceland and Greenland, according to another comment that I don't know if I've added to my list of things. So yeah, we're going to be getting basically all of the Atlantic islands in one go, potentially. I think the Eye of the Sahara got lost on its way back from Mecca, and if we open up this picture, it's because there's zero population over here in this desert. It's working and it's designed, not really. It's one of those former locations that wasn't properly converted into a corridor, and it will be fixed. And if you were wondering about what the Eye of the Sahara is, well, it's this thing. It's this geographical formation in Western Africa that looks fucking phenomenal. Like, that looks incredible. I don't... They don't really know what it was, how it formed, but I mean, look at this. That's definitely not what it looks like. I feel like that's just an artist interpretation, because, yeah, this. They don't really know what it is. I think it's probably some kind of asteroid impact, with it being a circle and all that. It's called the Ricat structure, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories about it. Obviously, it's Atlantis because it's got the three ringed walls and such that were mentioned. Look, it's totally Atlantis. Blah blah blah. But yeah, no, it's just a really interesting structure in the world, natural formation, and yeah, it's a big zero, and so is this. So it got moved. It makes sense. Would it not be better to have corridors covered by wasteland and less colonized in order to see more clearly? So they have to make some improvements to the graphical representation of the corridors. They already created some tickets about it to hopefully make it better. I think there should be a large Andalusian diaspora in the Maghreb. And yes, they agree, they're completely missing it. Basically, all of the Andalusians from, the state of Andalusia, of which there's only Granada remaining, who fled during the Reconquista. Fleeing into the Maghreb makes sense, and hopefully we'll be able to show that in the future. I love the map so far. I think the game's release would be a great time to stop calling the sub-Saharan peoples, such as the Tamazite, don't know how to pronounce that, barbarians. Basically, Berber is the same, it means barbarian. But here they go into basically their justification for using the term Berber. Technically, they would be on-Saharan, as they're both north, middle, and south of the Sahara. Not sub-Saharan, they're on-Saharan. They have other Saharan peoples apart from the Berbers, and they're aware of the debates on how to correctly name them, but they've decided upon the most common terminology in English, and if that ends up changing, they would be glad to address that, as with other peoples. And they've tried to portray these people in the most granular way ever in a grand strategy game. I mean, I feel like tried is just not necessary at this point. It is just straight succeededness. This is the most granular way these people, this region, has ever been portrayed in any game ever. That's not tried, that you succeeded in that. If the game came out tomorrow, even with, all of the flaws that a pre-release game would come out with the lack of the Andalusians and all of that, it's still already there, more granular and more faithful than any other game. And they have 9 different cultures, with the 8 mentioned in the dev diary, plus the Guanches. And then the description for the Berber culture is: the Berber people, or Amazi, I don't know how to pronounce that, are an ethnic group from North Africa. Their strong sense of identity clashes with the Arabic invaders that have been shaping their home regions since centuries ago. I think this is kind of... I feel like this came up before. There's another culture that was controversial, and I don't remember which one it was. Maybe someone can jog my memory on what that was. I think it was also to do with barbarian being a term used for them. But I mean, if we go back far enough, the origin of the term barbarian literally just means foreigner. And I guess calling yourself Berber in your own homeland probably doesn't make sense. But, languages change. Is the term Berber problematic? I honestly think it's on how you're using it, right? If you're using it in a derogatory sense, then yeah, sure. But you can use any word in a derogatory sense if you try hard enough. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the term Berber. But hey, I am just me, and the color of my skin is very visible right now. So I am happy to have my mind changed. I'm happy to, if basically it is determined and accepted that this is now wrong and we should call them something else, then that's fine too. I have no problem with that. Languages change, and we change along with them. I don't think that's anything to be scared of or angry about. Just like the name for Turkey has recently changed to Turkiye, and I think that's fine. If they want to be called that, then that's fine. The standard English name for the capital of Ukraine is now Kyiv, and that's also fine. And if you cry about that, you're not welcome on my channel. End of story. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Languages change along with them. If this ends up changing, they will change with it. That's fine. Moving on, the location of Ain Salih seems more white than grey on the political map compared to the surrounding locations. Essentially, the location appears coloured differently because of a graphical glitch caused when you hover over a location when changing the map mode. Okay, I brought this up not because I'm just pointing out, oh look, there's a bug and they're fixing it, but because it indicates something that has happened in recent Paradox games, which I really hate. I really hate. And that is when you hover over a province, a location, a territory, a group of area, then the whole area will light up like a fucking beacon. I hate it. It looks terrible. Just as a example of what I'm talking about here, this is my pre-release stream of Victoria 3. It's the first one that I came up with to basically show off what it is I'm talking about. But look at when he's hovering over, it's me, hovering over the different areas and it highlights the areas. I hate it. I think it looks terrible. And it happens with countries as well. I don't want that. I want that. If that's in, please make it an option, because it looks bad. Especially when it makes a noise as well, like hovering over these different things. Every little one makes this little clicky noise, and oh, I just hate it. It's so bad. It's not only in Vicky 3, so it's not as if I'm complaining just because it's a Victoria 3 thing. It's also in Crusader Kings. It just looks terrible. Please give us the option to not have that be highlighted, because I just hate it. It's so bad. But anyway, moving on. Would these names change if the countries get a different dynasty? Meaning to ask about dynastic tags. So they have a system for allowing for dynamic country name changes a bit depending on the ruling dynasty, but for now these countries specifically don't have it hooked to them and use a custom name. But yes, potentially they could add the Wattazid, Saadi, or Alawite sultanates appearing. Very cool. Dynastic naming is very common in like the Islamic nations, the sultanates. So yeah, definitely hope to see this appearing at some point. How do we colonize the oases? As with any other regular location. So yeah, there has to be a different colonization system, because in EU4 you would not be able to colonize through corridors because they don't exist, but you could only colonize something that is adjacent to something you have or adjacent to the water. So that's obviously changed. I'm once again going to reiterate that I'm looking forward to seeing how colonization works. Since all three dynasties are of Berber origin, what primary culture do Moroccan, Tlemcen, and Tunis start with? So Moroccan for Moroccan, they consider the Marinids quite Arabized by this time, the Zenati for Tlemcen, and Tunisian for Tunis. They also consider the Hafsids to be Arabized. Good to know. Question regarding saltpeter, because you notice Maghreb is another region where no location has saltpeter as its raw good. So far, all Tinto Maps released at the moment, from what I saw, there's only 7 locations that produce it. Brother has been very prolific looking at all of these maps in great detail. There's 1 in Anatolia, 1 in the Low Countries in Germany, 2 in Italy, and 3 in Iberia. Will there be other ways to get it besides trading? So, there are in fact other sources of saltpeter in the game, and Johan will maybe show it on a Saturday. And that is why I did not start this video with the Saturday building, because we're going to show it now. It is the Saltpeter Guild, where we are going to be utilizing, I believe that's copper. I believe that's copper. I can check that though. Saturday buildings. Wasn't it in here somewhere? Oh, reference sheet. Here we go. Reference sheet from map posts. That actually doesn't help at all. Be right back. Alright, I figured out. Based on this one here, that is actually clay. My bad. It's clay, livestock. Clay and livestock will produce a little bit of saltpeter, which is very useful, of course. Saltpeter utilized in making gunpowder, which is obviously kind of necessary if you want to blow your enemy up. But yes, clay and cows make saltpeter, and this is going to be a very important building if, as this guy says, there is not all that much natural saltpeter on the ground. I am wondering as well, potentially, are we going to get into a situation late game where you might want to colonize a bunch of random, uninhabited, shitty, quite literally, little islands in the middle of the ocean because of the large amounts of bird poop layered on top of them, like the USA historically did. All that guano being used, not necessarily for the for saltpeter, obviously, but I think it was used, obviously used very heavily in agriculture, but it's all about nitrogen, which is, I think, one of the things that you might need for gunpowder as well. That's what the saltpeter is. I mean, I don't know. I'm off on a tangent, and I feel like I'm kind of not really where I need to be with words, but just a random ramble thought from me. And yes, there is the Saltpeter Guild. At initial glance, it looks like Morocco and Tunis are a much better and stronger place than they were in EU4, whether we're speaking in absolute terms or in their relative strength against Castile. Am I correct? Morocco starts in a very strong position, with Tlemcen close to being conquered and subjugated. But it needs to be careful, as Castile might set its eyes upon the foothold in Iberia, and it has to manage the internal divisions of the Maghreb. I think this here is mainly going to be the challenge for Morocco, because Castile might set its eyes upon a foothold in Iberia. That's already going to be the case, right? That's the case in the EU4 as well. So to say that, oh yes, the game might not be as difficult because Castile is right there. Well, Castile's right there in EU4 as well. So that's not really the one that I'm looking at. But definitely the internal divisions of the Maghreb, internal politics slowing you down in becoming super strong, that might be the way. That might be the way. Any chance we could look at the minorities? Assume there's some way to see minority populations that are too small to show on the normal map mode. Something akin to Imperator is planned for this. Great. It worked super well in Imperator. Basically, if you go into some kind of culture UI, select one of these cultures, and you will see them highlighted in every single location where they exist, regardless of whether they are the majority, a minority, or such a minority that they won't even show up as dashed lines. Fantastic. That is perfect. It worked really well in Imperator. Glad to see it coming back. And then finally, West Africa is next. I feel like I missed that at the end of the original post, that we're going to see West Africa next. Ought to be an interesting choice for sure. Looking forward to the culture map there. Yeah, the culture of West Africa is quite literally the opposite of what Tinto thinks England is. England, one monolithic culture in EU5. West Africa, not. It's not that at all. It's not that. It was very complex to craft a summer 3 years ago that gives fond memories. I feel like there is quite a heavy bit of sarcasm going on there. Difficult. I imagine that it was very difficult. But anyway, that is it for this video. Maybe a little bit shorter than the Tinto talks about talking that I've done before, but again, we're going to be splitting these up into the map and the Tinto Talk post from now on, unless there's a really short one that, you know, can just be tacked on, but I highly doubt that that's going to be a thing. They've just been getting longer and longer in responses as we go along. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. On Wednesday, we will be, of course, talking more about Tinto Talks. They are coming out with a dev diary that is going to be talking about something that has completely slipped my mind, and now I am very curious, and I must get a better memory. This is something that I have a failing of mine. What are we talking about? Ships and navies. Yes, ships and navies. And then hopefully after that we'll go on to colonization. That would be great. But yeah, I will see you on Wednesday for that. And until then, bye-bye.